Should we be shooting to be done? Like 11?
Are you ready? You're going to get started? All right, everyone, we're going to get started with our breakout session, creating craveability, what to keep simple, when to innovate, how to best work with producers. And I'm happy to welcome back Joe Yonan to moderate this session.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back, or thanks for staying, whatever your personal situation might be. I am happy to be working with these wonderful chefs again today. You have been introduced to both of them, so I won't waste much time in introductions, but we have Alice Delcourt of Erba Brusca in Milan, and we have Elena Regatas of Rosetta and other restaurants. I won't name them all, in Mexico City, where I had the pleasure of having a lemon roll at one of the panaderias because the guava was out. And I heard all about the guava, and I went all across town, but the lemon was stellar, so thank you. Are you going first? No, Alice. So we'll see what Alice has for us today.
Sorry.
Hi.
Hi. I was waiting.
Welcome.
Sure.
I had a very short intro, so you're on.
Oh, okay. Oh, great. Okay, great. So today I am going to try to do the recipes right away. I was telling Joe before because I ran overtime yesterday.
Okay.
But I'm going to be doing 2 recipes, and I just wanted to show kind of the difference between having to use a more heavy hand with vegetables and then a lighter hand. And I think that is one of the more important things. What the theme of the session was when to know when to stop and not, and I think you really have to kind of understand your product. So something I was saying yesterday too, I really believe that our job as cooks is to truly understand a product and respect it and love it and then work with it and then show people how great it is. So I think that that's what we try to do. I'm going to be doing cauliflower like I think every single chef has been doing. But it's a great thing to work with. And I think a lot of chefs have kind of gotten into it because it's been one of those highly neglected vegetables. And they've actually found how great it can be. And it's exciting for us to kind of show people how to use it and to kind of eat it in a new way. I grew up eating cauliflower cheese. I don't know if anyone else ate that, but it was like cauliflower covered with like a cheesy bechamel sauce.
The best.
By my English mother. And so that's, I think, the only way I ever ate it, or raw. And it was always kind of sad, in a way, to eat it only that way. But here we've taken cauliflower, and I've roasted it whole, I think, which is what most people do these days. But you can also... Lots of people do it even just boiled. The idea is that you are able to kind of cook it through fully before you then sear it. And I just cut it up kind of like as if it was, what do you say in English? Like a spicchio. I don't know what you say. I'm sorry. A slice or
A chop or
quarter. Yes, thank
quarter.
you. And this is good too. I mean, this, obviously we do this for practicality at the restaurant because we need to do this before service because it takes around 45 or 50 minutes to cook it whole in the oven. So this is a way, but you wouldn't want to serve it like this because it's kind of cold, and or even if you heat it up in the oven, it just tastes like you cooked it a while ago. So the idea is that we sear it off, and people do this also like they did yesterday in brown butter. Cauliflower pairs really well, obviously with dairy. This plate is vegan, but we also do it at the restaurant with feta on top or something. And we're just gonna sear off both sides, and I like to, no, actually I salt at the end. And this is actually also a plate where we've taken the cauliflower and we're gonna use it in different forms, which obviously you've also seen several times this conference. But the idea is that you take it, and sometimes, especially in the winter, I was saying before to Diego that part of my problem sometimes in Milan is really in the winter. I'm very limited in terms of what I'm getting, so it's a lot of brassicas, cabbages, and all of these things. And sometimes you're like, well, what am I going to do? So you try to, also what Cheryl was doing yesterday, maybe present it in different forms. So we are going to grill this one. But we also serve it with, I made a sauce, which is just kind of an onion base, and then I braise some more cauliflower into it, and we blend it up really, really well once it's cooked through. And then we've also pickled it. So the idea is using the same element or the same product and presenting it in 3 different forms, and they taste really different because this tastes incredibly roasty, and like you really highly roasted it, and so it has that kind of charred but sweetness. And then this tastes really creamy, almost as if it was fatty. And you do emulsify it with oil, so it does have that kind of fat heft to it. And then we have some acidity that comes from the pickled raw cauliflower. So I'm just gonna turn this over. And you just want to get a really nice color on that. Because it tastes nicer that way.
Chef, when you first cooked it whole, was it uncovered the whole time? Do you baste it?
No,
or do you
I
cover
actually do it like in a really large cast iron pot in the oven, and so I'll massage it with. We actually sometimes do it with butter, but you can do it just with oil, and we make like a herb salt that we kind of smother on it, and then I cover it for the first half an hour or something just to kind of steam it, and then you open it up, and that kind of browns it on top.
Yeah, great.
So that's a great way to do it. So we have our cauliflower, and what we like to do is just kind of do this, and then I always salt this. You have to really salt it nicely because obviously even though you salted it on the outside, it doesn't get salted inside, so make sure you salt it really well. And lots of lemon juice. I really highly recommend that you put lemon juice on pretty much everything that comes on. And we like to just kind of put that on here. And then I take the pickled cauliflower and we... and now I've made a dukkha, which I'm sure most of you, being in the food profession, have seen before, which is a Middle Eastern, I believe it's from Egypt. It's a condiment, and all it is are these really basic. So it's these 3 spices, usually, coriander seeds, cumin, and some fennel seeds. And then we take black pepper as well. And you toast them all in a pan, and with some kind of nut or sesame seeds. So I've used almonds because they had lots of them, and also sesame seeds, but I've also done it, a lot of people do with hazelnuts, it's delicious. You toast them really well in a pan, and then you just kind of blend them up with some nice salt, and you get this great condiment, which is called dukkha. And to be totally honest, I use it on everything. No, I don't use it on everything, but it's delicious. And It has this kind of, it's really salty, but it's also nutty and aromatic, and it has the smokiness of the spices that have been toasted. And I really like to just kind of put that on. And what's great about these vegetables like this is that because they're really hearty, they can really take all the spices that you need. And then I have these are raisins that I just put in some of the pickling liquid that usually comes of the cauliflower. And I cut them up and I put this on top. And once again, brassicas can really hold their own with spices, but also with sweet and the acidity. I do a lot of, in Italy, there's a lot of traditional dishes where they do bitter greens and they braise them and they'll put raisins in them, they'll put grapes in them sometimes and do all that because they really do pair incredibly well with spice and sweetness, and that's a great way. And then I usually finish off with a little lemon zest, and that kind of gives a whole new freshness. Like the lemon juice always gives this kind of, it just amplifies the taste of whatever you're putting it on, but I find that the zest kind of gives it this little zing, and it's really aromatic. And then the mint, you can cut it up really finely, or you can just kind of tear it up on top of the plate. And I like kind of big chunks. And that really just gives a whole plate a bit of freshness. So I know this is nothing that people haven't seen before, but I think this is a great way also to introduce people to this vegetable again. And we do this all the time, this type of plating at the restaurant, maybe with I forgot her name. Barbara did yesterday with the carrots. That was beautiful, and all of those kinds of vegetables we do them with all the time. We do a lot with pumpkin. I do roasted pumpkin, and we've also done pickled pumpkin, like butternut squash pumpkin, where you slice it really thin and do that raw, and that's delicious. And there's just a lot of things you can do, as we've seen also with Cheryl. She did that great, all those fermenting and the different techniques. But it's fun to take one vegetable and just try to play with it, especially because a lot of vegetables have a lot of waste. So with the cauliflower, often they come with those kind of big leaves and too much stem, and we'll often make the sauce only out of that rather than chopping up a whole nother cauliflower,
right.
you know? And that's a great way. So that's that plate.
Great.
And, oh, thanks. Yes, thank you. Okay.
Brassica on brassica on brassica.
Brassica. This next plate is really, really simple, but it's one of, I have to be honest, like one of the things that people like the most at the restaurant, and I think that has a lot to do with the fact that they just, I don't know, it's just very fresh, and people don't often eat it this way. This I call a panissa. So Italy has this amazing, Italy has an amazing variety of legumes. Many of them are in Slow Food's Arc of Taste, and they cost a fortune. They cost me about 6 or 7 times what I would pay for like a normal legume. But they have an incredible taste. And it really, when you're doing plant forward, I think it makes a huge difference. I mean, it really, because legumes can give you kind of the heft and the body you need in a lot of plates that meat usually gives you, but without having to use meat. So I use them a lot. And panissa is actually from the north of, they call it panissa in the north of France, south of France, near Nice. But
Are these chickpeas?
this is, yes,
Yeah.
panissa is a chickpea flour-based kind of cake. I'm going to show you, sorry. Like this. So it reminds you kind of like a polenta that's been cooked and then gotten cold. So chickpea flour, you find it in dishes all through this kind of the coastal, so from Nice down to maybe the Ligurian coast, so all around Cinque Terre, which is called farinata, which becomes a kind of like chickpea pancake you'll find in lots of places where they sell focaccia. And then all the way down into Tuscany, where it's called cecina, and they make it kind of a bit thicker. They also make it all the way down, and I don't know why it's all along the coast, but all the way down to Sicily, where they make panelle, which are these delicious, same thing, they cook it off, and then they roll it really thin, though, and cut it, so it's the same idea as this, really thin, and then they fry it, and it becomes these kind of big pillows of chickpea flour, and of chickpea kind of cake, and they eat it actually as a sandwich, like they put it on bread.
Right. And soca. And soca is
Yes,
another-
I'm sorry. You're right. Soca is in the south of France.
Yeah.
It's what they also call it. Sorry. And I used to call it that, but then nobody understood what
Right.
it was. So I was like, I wanted to show what it kind of starts to look like. So obviously it comes together really fast, and you just really want to beat it. I'm not going to finish this because you actually have to cook it about 40 minutes until it really comes away from the edges of the pot. If you don't, it just tastes really raw. And you can taste it in the beginning, and you'll taste how you can still taste this kind of really floury chickpea flakes. And at the end, it starts to taste more and more like a cooked chickpea, you know?
It looks very much like choux pastry right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's the same consistency. So we did that. And what I do at the restaurant is we take this and we'll make a huge batch of it. I put it in a huge hotel pan. You put a weight on top of it just to make sure it's nice and packed down. And then we cut it up into pieces like this. And then if the orders come in, we sear it off. So kind of same concept as the cauliflower I was doing. While that's heating up, I'll talk about these ingredients. I'm sorry.
And the word, in case people are making this connection, was also what inspired Alice Waters to name her restaurant.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Chez Panisse.
I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's exciting. There you go. So people also fry this, like in this kind of form. I do sometimes at the restaurant, we serve it almost like a French fry. You cut them a little smaller, and then you can serve it with a really nice, I don't know, I mean, we serve it often with like a kimchi mayonnaise or something. But if you want to do it vegan, you can do it with a yogurt sauce or something. It's a really nice kind of alternative to your average potato or something. And people enjoy it. And I think more and more people are gluten-free, and so they kind of like that. So we're just going to let that sear off, and that might take a second, so I'll just talk about this. So all we're doing is pair. I never knew what to pair this with, because you eat it all the time as kind of like a snack in Italy, as if you would focaccia or any other kind of thing that you could eat just walking around. It's not really paired with anything, and I really wanted to put it on the menu because it just seemed like a great way to use chickpea flour and make it something, but I wanted to make it fresh because it just seemed very kind of, it is very, a little bit heavy. And I will preface this that the chickpea flour here is very different. I didn't know. So it, you'll eat it at lunch, but it usually tastes a little bit lighter. I find it really dense here. I don't know what it is. You might want to cut it smaller if you make it at home. But the ones I use are just a little bit more light,
Okay.
you know? And I don't know what it is, but so I have cut some zucchini. I cut some zucchini very thinly with a mandolin, and I just grill them off. So I often will do them on my flat top, but you can also do them in a pan or on a grill. But I did these this morning, for example, just in some oil. And we do it at the restaurant, obviously, just to kind of to order. So you have your warm zucchini that's been grilled, and I'm going to steal somebody's bowl. Sorry. And I just want to make something really fresh. So in Italy, they have, they do something called zucchini in scapece, which is a Neapolitan dish. And you fry zucchini, or you kind of do it in a lot of oil, but usually it's actually deep fried. And then you dress it with red wine vinegar, garlic, and mint. And I love that. Before I burn this, sorry. So you have to be kind of careful. Oh, here we go. That's great. And not do that. Do you have a spatula? I'm sorry. Oh, yes, obviously. So you want to use a spatula, and you just want that to happen.
Yeah, beautiful.
Sorry. So don't do that at home. Okay. And so I love and it's one of my favorite dishes, I'll be totally honest. So I've made them lots of times. I make them all the time, zucchini and melanzane, so eggplant in scapece, and I'll just kind of grill them off and put garlic and red wine vinegar and lots of herbs. I do mint, I put marjoram and all those things. Just for my at home, I eat that all the time and I love it. And it tastes even better kind of the next day because all the kind of spices, all the flavors come together. But at the restaurant, they kind of look a little sad the next day. You know, they kind of start to lose their color and they're not vibrant. And it's a little heavy. So the idea was that I would kind of do the same thing. So at the restaurant, we kind of just grill these off, and then I do a really just a really zingy vinaigrette. This just has red wine vinegar, olive oil, and some mustard in it. And I did with arugula. I'm missing my, oh, here we go. And I do this in the summer, obviously, when the zucchini are nice, and I do it with a little bit of mint and basil. And then, and also around the same time, we get these great cipollati, which are spring onions in Italy, but they're really large. They have this huge bulb, and it's just this kind of incredible, they have this really lovely sweetness, and they're really nice to work with. So I put some of those in, but raw. And we kind of usually cut those to order because they lose a little bit of their flavor. And I like to use the zucchini flowers too, because in Italy the zucchini flowers are often just fried, which is delicious. But you could also like fry my shoe, and it would be delicious. So like,
is your shoe made of
maybe
zucchini
not
flour?
my shoe, but exactly. I can't tell with ricotta. No, and so I kind of just mix this up to order, and you just want to get like a really fresh salad. This is also a great one to do kind of on buffets and stuff. People, it looks really nice, and it's just kind of a big mountain of salad, so people like that. I'll just use this gigantic plate. Okay, great. And I did cook 2 of them off, which is great because one of them I ruined. And you can sear them on all sides, obviously, if you want it to look pretty. We also just sear them, and then often I'll give it just like 2 seconds in the oven. Just if for some reason you've taken it right out of the fridge, you just want to make sure that it warms up all the way through. And at the restaurant, we do kind of 2 pieces, and like this. And then, I mean, everyone else has made such fancy food. I'm kind of like, you just want to kind of pile it on top, like that. And then I wanted always to give, so I have my kind of the heft of the panisa, and it's nice and roasted, and then the salad, which has nice acidity and is fresh, but there's no consistency, there's no texture change really. So I like to do a lot of different kind of toasted seeds. So here I just did flax, I do flax, sunflower, sesames. At the restaurant, I often just will only do pumpkin seeds because they're in the same family as the zucchini, so it just makes more sense. But and that's it.
Pumpkin on pumpkin on pumpkin.
Pumpkin, yeah, exactly. So that's just a really, really simple plate, but thanks.
So, Chef, what's your first step when you're thinking about a dish like that? Like, what came to you first?
So, we talked about this yesterday with somebody, and I've always found that it's really difficult to work when I have too much choice. It's like American supermarkets are incredibly overwhelming to me. So, but I do believe that it's really important to work with your producers. So for me, that's like the first step. Obviously, like we've talked about, for us, the producers have been the main part of, of our restaurant. And a lot of it is kind of, well, we have this one organic farm that we've always worked with, and every week they send me their list of what they have. So they also source some other organic ingredients from other organic farms in Italy. So they do have a little bit more of selection than kind of just they don't only have what they grow, which helps a little bit because, for example, they don't grow carrots or they don't grow onions. And those are kind of the base to a lot of, even if you're doing really super uber farm to table, Italian kids cooking is really based on il soffritto, which is kind of the sauteing of onions or carrots or celery in the beginning. And they send it to me, and we look at it, and then we create the menu from there. Now, obviously, there are times where that list doesn't change for a few weeks, especially in the winter, and they have the same things. And so the menus are kind of a little bit more the same for a longer amount of time. But because we have the 2 tasting menus that are blind, they often will have 1 or 2 products that are kind of very fleeting. They have avocados in Sicily. And so they'll get those for a little while, or sometimes they have lupolo, which is hops. So you get these, they look like wild asparagus, and those are incredibly short-lived, and they're also foraged. So we'll have those and put them in a risotto. But that's where the main inspiration comes from, are my producers. Sometimes I'll have somebody, and it'll just be kind of guy, and he makes lamb, and after 7 weeks, I've ordered it, finally it comes, and that goes on the menu, and we have to be a little bit more creative. But in terms of the creation of the recipes, I think that what's really important is to kind of understand the cuisine that makes your heart sing a little bit. So I'm not Italian, but I love Italian food. It's always been my kind of touchstone. But I also feel really lucky that I'm not caged in by the traditions that are there. So I think one of the hardest things for Italian chefs is that they feel really trapped by the tradition and it's just this incredible tradition, culinary tradition there. And everybody is like, oh, well, you know, my nonna makes this best, and so I never try to make anything that anybody's grandma makes, you know.
Can't win.
Because I can't win. I really can't. And I think that, but I feel that I'm lucky because I'm allowed to be inspired by the recipes and I respect them. I don't try to make any kind of fusion food, but that I don't feel trapped by that kind of, you know, by the fact that they think that they should always do it in this way because they've only put out that way, and in their house they only do it that way. You know?
Right. Yeah, I was going to ask you how your multicultural background affects your cooking, and you answered it. How do you know when to stop when you're thinking about creating a dish? Like, what's your process like of editing yourself?
Eating, you just have to eat a lot. No, I mean, I kind of make a joke, but it's true. You have to kind of, sometimes we'll just try the dish and then try it again, try it with something else. But I also think that, like I said before, I think you have to really understand your product. You know that if you put a ton of stuff on this cauliflower, it's really going to have a hard time dominating it regardless. So this recipe at the restaurant, we also put some kind of Sardinian feta on top of it, and that's really nice. But it seems like a lot of things on the plate, you know, in the end. But it works perfectly because it just provides this incredible palate. While here, if you put that much more than this, you don't taste the zucchini anymore. So I think it's really about knowing which products can take spices, which products can take the acidity and everything else. I also think that a lot of traditional cuisine, Italian cuisine, can really teach you. So Italy is this incredible country, I think, because of the regional cuisine. So, you know, you can be eating canederli, which are these kind of strange bread, almost German dumplings in, you know, Alto Adige, and at the same time be eating pasta with ginger and couscous in Sicily. You know, so there's this incredible regional cuisine, and most Italians don't know anything about it. I mean, I serve so many Milanese panzanella, which is this bread salad, I'm sure everyone here's had it, from Tuscany, and they've come and asked me what it is. They've never eaten it, you know. So that's amazing because you're always discovering new things. While instead France, I feel like, which I love the cuisine, but it's an incredible national cuisine. Everyone kind of feels like they have these staples everywhere you go. I'm not saying they don't have different products, but the actual recipes are actually very national. You know, the entire country kind of does them. So, yeah.
Right. Great. Any questions for Chef? Come on.
I'm glad I'm so interested.
No, very interesting. Yes, sir.
I'm just curious if you had a favorite spice in the terroir that your restaurant is.
So Italians don't use spices. It's kind of a strange thing, but they use fresh herbs, but not even that many, to be totally honest. So they use basil, mint, and then they use rosemary and sage. And that's always kind of been something that's been sad for me. So I've had to always kind of, there's no spices that people are really using, except for saffron, obviously, but I don't know if you would even call that a spice. Or black pepper in Tuscany. Yeah, or black pepper, yeah. But nothing, or, you know, or they use a lot of peperoncino in Calabria, which it's everywhere. But they don't really use that many spices, which is very strange, except for a little bit of cinnamon. Sometimes they make cinnamon with zucchini in Sicily, which is kind of, but it's good.
Just, how does that affect how your customers have received your cuisine when they've run into things like more spices and the duca?
You have to go kind of easy, you know. But I think they really enjoy them. People are pretty open to them. You have to go a little easy on the spicy. Yeah, like actual hot pepper spicy. They're a little bit sensitive to that. But, you know, all these dried oreganos and things that you find in Italian-American cuisine happened to Italian cuisine when they came to America because they couldn't find the fresh things. So it was this kind of evolution of Italian cuisine in that way. I'm sorry, you... I studied political science there. which I think is hilarious because it obviously didn't serve me at all. But I studied political science there, and I just really fell in love with it. So I kept on going back various times for work and other things, and then I just kind of never left. So, yeah.
Do you think that you talked about this a little bit before, but I'm curious to hear a little bit more. Do you think that the blind aspect of your tasting menu really affects the way your dishes are, the way you even create your dishes, knowing that you don't have to, quote unquote, sell them?
Yes, definitely. You also want to impress somebody, right? Because they trust you.
Right.
So I think that's the hard thing, is that you want to push them and make them curious and enjoy it, but you also don't want to scare them.
Right.
You want them to come back. Usually it's
Right.
people who, so I think that we have clients who come often, and then I know I can kind of, maybe they'll get something actually that's not on anybody's blind taste. You know what I mean? But you have to kind of find that balance. So usually when we're making the blind tasting menu, it's also like, I know this is plant-forward, but we'll have like seared pig heart.
Uh-huh.
And then, but then the next, like the risotto will be with like, something nice like cheese and rosemary and figs, or something. You have to kind of have a balance of something that is an easy pleaser, and then something that makes them think a little bit more. I also call pig heart the other fillet. And they're
Very,
like,
very
that was
other. Do people have an opportunity to tell you about any preferences or restrictions beforehand?
Yeah, so they always say, and we get all the time.
Yeah.
Lots of pregnant women don't eat anything raw. That doesn't happen in the States so much, but they don't eat any raw foods. I mean, any vegetables, anything. So that's one of the hardest things, is when we get pregnant women, I find. Gluten-free, lactose intolerant pregnant women.
Right.
But they no, so they do. And it is hard because you want to please. And so I also think that sometimes I like to have kind of a more plant-based or plant-forward menu, or almost vegan, because at least I've kind of eliminated all the...
Right.
It's hard to make a vegan menu, 6-course vegan menu like that.
Right.
Without having any kind of prep time. I mean, you saw some of the vegan dishes yesterday were amazing, but they were like 36 hours of cooking,
Right.
or all of these things. So when someone comes in and has a really strict... Sometimes some of the menu maybe has too much stuff that's not vegan. I'll just say, you know what, it's better if I can offer you these plates, but it's better if you don't try to do the tasting menu. Because you'll just be a little disappointed. I don't want to just give you like a bruschetta with tomatoes.
Right. Great. I think that's good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chef.
Thanks.
Now we have Chef Elena coming to cook for us. She's here. Hi. Quiet. You're so quiet. Hi.
Hi. Thank you for being here, and thank you, all of you, that you are listening. All these amazing conferences that we are trying to share and to communicate. So thank you.
Great. Sure.
Well, today I'm going to show you a dish that is super simple, and I thought of this dish after what the topic is today, that it's how to do dishes, when to innovate, when to keep simple. That, of course, it's a question that we think a lot, and I usually try to be simple. I usually try to leave the ingredient to be the protagonist of the dish, and usually the ingredients are the ones that kind of lead us to be creative. And for example, this dish came out when there was an abundance of herbs in the Chinampas, where is this part of the south part of Mexico City, where we get our produce from, most of our vegetables. And it was the starting of the rains, and there was lots and lots of herbs. And we just had to use them. And I think this type of circumstances, it's what make us do certain dishes. Definitely, abundancy, it's one of these decisions, and it's always related to seasons and to what we have. But I also feel sometimes even the same colors go together well. So, you know, herbs, avocado definitely go together. And in general, I like to play with kind of the same colors with the dishes, because I found it just naturally goes together, like beets with radicchio, or cauliflower with sultanas, for example. I just feel color is what can guide you as well. And of course, terroir. I think like in this dish, there are some Mexican herbs, but there's also chicatana ants that you will try, but they are also appearing at the same time of the wild herbs, like in the starting of the rains. So I think when certain ingredients grow together, they go well together. It's just like Mother Nature, it's perfect, and you just have to listen and to be attentive to these kind of signals. But I think, you know, this is a good way to be creative, just listening and following the ingredients. And really, I think it's a very instinctive way, but it's also just like paying attention, I feel.
Great.
So here we have, this is watercress. This is epazote, which it's a strong herb. In Mexico, we add this especially to esquites. It's always paired with corn, but it's always paired also, well, not always, but goes very well with insects in general. So because we're using the chicatanas, we also use the epazote, but mainly the chicatanas came after. Like we just kind of mixed all the herbs that we had, and then we thought what could get well. But well, here is epazote, here is also some purslane that, you know, it's super abundant in rainy season. And in Mexico, we eat lots and lots of purslane since a long time ago. Here we have nasturtium leaves, some hoja santa, which is this beautiful big leaf. I don't know if you know it. It's one of my favorite herbs. In the traditional Mexican cooking, it's used with beans or to wrap tamales, for example, like this, or to wrap fish. But we use it in the restaurant with chocolate also. We do an ice cream with it. We do a vegan mole with it. This is one of the herbs we use the most. It's strong, it's anise, but I really love it. It's like really fresh and really gives a kick. And I always feel there should be like a toothpaste made out of hoja santa, because it's like really, really beautiful, like aftertaste menu. So we just add a bit of this. And really you can use whatever herbs you have. Like here we couldn't get them, of course, but we also use papalo, which is also a weed, and lots of quelites, which they come with the rain. But also, you know, this is a fennel fronds, and we also have some parsley. But you know, you can use tarragon, you can use any herb, mint, peppermint. Yes? Well, in this dish with all the herbs, I thought insects would be good, because insects for me is like an amazing seasoning, like anchovies in Italy, that sometimes you use the anchovies more like in the bottom line, in the bottom of the flavor than the anchovy itself, no? Like for me, insects work very well in that case, especially this type of insects, which are the chicatanas, which are very small but very strong flavored. And they have the smokiness that comes after, once they are catched, they are toasted in the comal. So what happens with the chicatanas, that they come from Guerrero and from Oaxaca mainly, it's that they are underneath the ground, and with the rain, when the rains start, they come out, because otherwise the rain packs the ground and they don't survive. So they come out of the ground, and it's how the people catch them. Like in the night, they keep the light of the house on, and they come out of the ground to the light, and then they trap them with towels, with not dry, but what's the opposite of dry? Wet towels. Yeah. I'm sorry. So basically, it's how they trap them. And once they trap them, they put them in the comal just to roast them. And it's how they keep them. And you can keep them not in the refrigerator, just outside, like for a long time, like a year perfectly, when they are good roasted, because they are dehydrated completely. And then you just, people in the small villages where the chicatanas come from, use them usually to season salsas. Like they grind them and they add them to salsas, or sometimes even in mole. But for me, I prefer just to leave them, like we do a nice butter with them, just, mix the butter with the chicatanas. And here we just did a vinaigrette, just red wine vinegar, olive oil, and the chicatanas, and that's it, which is this one here. And let me see if we have a spoon. Oh, it's a big spoon, but...
So they're not traditionally served whole in any dishes, or are they?
No,
sometimes?
It's never. You never
like
see them traditionally whole. Like lately, insects have become a bit fashionable in Mexico, so sometimes you see them in restaurants, maybe whole, but it's not really how tradition do. You never see them in traditional way, like whole.
Not
always
like with the
grounded.
Like not like with the grasshoppers.
No, no. However, sometimes in Oaxaca, people drink mezcal and like a appetizer, instead of an olive or
it's
something.
like the worm in the bottle back from your college days, if anyone remembers it.
Some of these, so you know what I'm talking about. What we do in the restaurant is just you kind of reheat them and you revive them. So just like the oil in them comes out and the flavors comes out. So I'm going to give you to try some. And in the salad with the avocado, it's something simple, but with the chicatana, I think it's maybe where the innovation comes. And I always, try to think what's innovation and what's not, and if simple is not innovation. I think it's a big question, but I feel maybe innovation shouldn't be thought as invention or as transformation. For me, innovation is maybe just to break tradition, just to, trying a chicatana in a vinaigrette with herbs and not with meat, or how it's usually done, or the hoja santa in the sweet side. For me, I could call that innovation, or that's how I like to work in an innovation kind of side. I am not very fond of transforming foods in a very radical way. I love to leave ingredients pure and beautiful, and through the combination and through the mix of flavors, then propose something else.
It strikes me that it's innovative to use the epazote and the hoja santa in a fresh mint salad, isn't it? I mean,
absolutely.
Usually they're always cooked.
Yes, usually it's too strong to use in a salad, but I feel with avocado that has lots of lime, actually, it freshes, and then you can really stand that. Or even epazote, not epazote, I'm sorry, papalo. Papalo, it's a very strong herb, usually served with barbacoa, to cut the fat. And it's a herb that many Mexicans don't like. However, we love it, and we love it fresh and with a pasta, with a pasote, and people are always afraid to taste it because they associate it so much with barbacoa. But I think, and I'm very happy to try to break that idea of what papalo is. I like the idea that papalo can be many things. It can have many faces. And I think in general, ingredients have many faces. And for me, that's when innovation comes, maybe. But well, I'm going to give you these chicatanas, so you try them while I plate the salad. So you let me know what you think.
Are they vegetarian? I don't think they are.
Well, insects, it's something that sometimes I
wow,
find
that's good.
It's good.
Yeah.
I had sometimes vegetarian people, and they do eat insects.
I know. I feel like I've heard this articulated. Yeah. I mean, they're not animals. They're not plants, but they're not animals.
Yes,
so
it's something always like what are they?
they are smoky. It's like almost like a mild smoky pepper.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they have lots of umami, and for me, it's a seasoning more than a flavor itself. Do we have like a small spoon? Yes. Okay, thank you. And then, of course, insects are part of Mexican cooking.
Of course.
And they are full of protein, but for me the beautiful thing is they are full of flavor and of a unique flavor. And each insect has its own flavor.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of what's been articulated about eating insects in this fashionable trend we're in now in the United States has been all about sustainability and the nutritional aspects, and they've been just ground into flours and put inside chips, but people aren't really talking about the unique flavors of them at all.
But I think you always need the flavor to be there, because things that are associated with nutrition or with, these superfoods, but if they don't have a good flavor, then it's very difficult to really work with them or to really make them something stable. I think flavor needs to be there. It's not only about nutrition. You need to combine it in order to make it delicious and appealing.
How are you articulating some of these ideas on your menu, Elena? I'm curious about like the herb that you said that a lot of Mexicans don't really love, but that you love, and other things that you're doing. How are you selling them on your menu? How are you describing the dishes?
Well, of course, it's always a challenge, but it always helps to pair something that more appealing to people or something more known with other not so known or something more demanding, or just with confidence. I think we have people, fortunately, that now they get in our hands and they trust you, and that's very beautiful, because you don't want the trust to disappear. So, you can give a try, and you always can say, if you don't like it, it's not a problem. We change it immediately, but give it a chance. And fortunately now it's easier. In the beginning it was more difficult, but now we have, I think, most of the people trust what we do, even if it's something not so appealing. There's people that say, for example, this papalo pasta, they say, no, I hate papalo. Papalo is not for me. And always is, well, try it. It's different in pasta because it's more subtle and it's, in another way. So just give it a go.
But I have a question. Your restaurant's in Mexico City, right?
Yes.
The papalo is something that you would find in the south of Mexico mostly. You would find in the south of Veracruz and other places. So isn't that a regional situation too? That people in some areas are used to some herbs, and then maybe the people in Mexico City are not that familiar with those flavors?
Well, papalo, really you can find it in. Yes. Well, but what happens is, although, of course, more people know that those herbs in certain parts of Mexico and not in the city, but still, the city now is so strong, and so many people from for example, from Veracruz now live in the city, and we have many people that say, "Oh, it's beautiful. I haven't tried hoja santa since I was, living in Veracruz, or nanche. It's a fruit that I only find in my hometown. It's amazing you are working with it instead of doing a dessert with strawberries and figs. That would be much more easy, no?" So that's part of what really interests me, what moves me, is always try to use these kind of ingredients that are more difficult in a sense. But then when you really connect with people through those more difficult ingredients, it's what gives more satisfaction, of course. So, in the end, Mexicans are open-minded, and if it's Mexican, they like it. So we're very patriotic in that way. So that's, at least now, it's a good moment for that. There's a lot of pride of Mexican ingredients and of being Mexican. Maybe that didn't happen 10, 15 years ago, but now it's a good time. So we need to take advantage of that. And also I think that's because chefs of this generation are also proud of the ingredients we have in Mexico. And so we're working more with them, and then people just, are more open to that. But well, maybe, I don't know, because I'm always bad with timing. So this is simple. You can do it at home. This is avocado with lots of lime, salt, and a pinch of serrano. You can add more or less serrano as you like. So we just put some of the avocado at the bottom. And as I say, I think, I don't know, that there's something in colors. Greens and greens always go well together. I'm going to put some salt, no pepper in the herbs. I'm not very fond of putting pepper in every dish. I just like pepper in certain things. A bit of lemon, not too much, because this is already lemony, and then the vinaigrette is also very... Did you like the chicatanas? Yes?
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
I feel like they're vegetarian.
We have another plate that is similar to this, that it's a nasturtium flower, and we put the avocado puree inside, and then we add a much bigger insect called cocopache, which is almost like a cockroach. But it's beautiful.
Oh boy.
People always are like, but then in the flower, it's very appealing, and it's like a canapé, and it's very beautiful.
I want to get there.
We finished with just a little bit of olive oil because the avocado is already too fatty. Well, not too, but it's fatty enough. And this is it. Something very simple.
Beautiful.
And full of flavor and plant forward.
Love it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So you finished a little bit with a few minutes to spare, so we actually have time for some questions.
That's great.
Yeah, I don't have to we didn't have to play the music, play you off the stage. So, my favorite, one of my favorite things that you said was thinking about what the protagonist of the dish was. Did you guys hear that? I've never really heard it expressed that way before, and I love that word, which is really from theater and drama and storytelling. So it makes me think that that when you're thinking about dishes, that you're thinking about a story. Are you? Does that make sense? Do you think about telling a story with your cooking?
I think every dish needs to have like a story behind. Maybe I didn't think so consciously in that sense, like a story, but I think every dish needs to communicate something. So yes, in that sense, to tell a story. So for me, this dish connects with abundance, with the rainy season, with the soil. Usually we use all Mexican herbs, so with Mexican land. Mm-hmm. So yes, it does. It needs to communicate something. And for me, it needs to connect you with something. Even if it's a simple dish as a herb salad with avocado, it needs to connect with something. And I feel that makes the dish stronger and like more memorable.
Yeah, I love that the vinaigrette in that dish. I think it's really telling that it's under the greens, because it does seem like that echoes the fact that the chicatanas are coming out of the ground. They're not like visible. Was that conscious? Was that idea that they're?
I didn't thought about the idea of that they come, of underground, but I always like the idea of putting the chicatanas at the bottom more to give like a kick while you are eating the herbs, and in a more subtle way. Mm-hmm. And I like to work usually in that sense, like more subtle and not so evident that it's on top. And some people, once or so many times has happened to me, maybe they want like an event and they've tried the menu, and some people say, but why you don't put another color to give a contrast? No? Why you don't put some cherry tomatoes on top? And I say, well, why? It's beautiful, green.
It is beautiful.
Or we do this fresh corn tamal with a celeriac and smoked butter, which is all whites. Mm-hmm. And that honestly, I didn't thought of it as I want to do a white dish. It just worked together, like the flavors. And there was these people that said, but why you don't put something not white? I was like, it's too white. But I love the idea of giving the kick or the, more in an underneath approach.
It seems it's simultaneously subtle but also dramatic. It strikes me to focus in on one color like that. Mm-hmm.
And it's not that I always focus on that. It just, now I realized it happens, and I have dishes like that.
Yeah, great. Any questions for Chef? Yes, sir.
Where do you draw your inspiration from as you look for seasonality or new dishes to come up with?
I think inspiration for me comes from many sources. I like, for example, to visit markets in Mexico and just see what's around. And in that sense, I feel what goes together, but also talking to the women or to the men that are selling those products and asking them how they use them, in which way they cook them. That always gives me ideas, and I get very inspired with that. I love also to read about how certain ingredients were used, maybe a century ago in Mexico. Also talking a lot with my team, fortunately, the team of the Kitchen of Rosetta, it's formed of, young guys and girls that come from all over Mexico. So sometimes, the guy that lives in Guerrero tells how they, use it at home. And so it's always like from different sources. And also, like when we give the dish to the client, there's many times like an answer to the dish, no? Like this question about when to stop, when you know when a dish is ready. Sometimes it's even like our clients, the ones that tell us it's ready, because you never know when it's ready. Like for me, it can always be adjusted, or you can always add something else, but I think you need to let it go. It's like a child. At some point, you just need to let it go, and then you can add more things and you can keep going. But they are also like a good way also to have a response and an answer to if it's done or if it needs something else.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question about your purchasing produce from the Chinampas.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get everything from there or from other markets or something very special?
I get most of the vegetables from there, and
Chef, can I ask you to explain the chinampas?
yes,
to
of course.
everyone?
Chinampas, for the ones that you don't know, chinampas are small islands that have been done by men in the south part of Mexico City in what used to be a huge lake. And it's, since Aztec times, it's the agricultural way of harvesting in Mexico City. It was lost, and lately it has been retaken, and we work together with Yolcan, that it's a group of people that have been reincorporating the tradition of agriculture in the Chinampas with the people that live in Xochimilco, and the soil, it's full of minerals, and it's very amazing produce that comes from there. So we work with them, but they also have, these people of the Chinampas, they have another place in Texcoco and another place in a more cold area in Mexico, outside of Mexico City.
It seems to me that the young chefs like you, Enrique Olvera, are actually revitalizing this whole idea of the Chinampa agriculture, because for the longest time it was practically abandoned.
Yes. For us chefs, like for Enrique, or yesterday Joaquin talked also about the Chinampas, it's really, really a privilege to have a place like the Chinampas within the city, especially in Mexico City, that it's a very, very huge, chaotic city. To have this space is really like an oasis. It's really, important for us in many ways to support a project like the Chinampas, not only because the vegetables that come and that grow there are amazingly within flavor. Everything is organic and the flavor is amazing, but also sourcing from them, we are, taking care also of like ancient knowledge that is very important in cultural terms, and it also supports like a social justice in that sense, because what in the Chinampas we pay, maybe in the Central de Abastos, which is the main market, you pay 1/10 part of that. So it's very important for us to support a project like the Chinampas.
Chef, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Elena. Thank you, Alice. We'll have about 15-minute break before the next set of breakouts. So in this room and in the Napa Valley Vintners Theater. So for those of you staying here, see you in 15 minutes. And there's coffee and nuts in the atrium.